Okay, right, let's get on to the rest of the album reviews then. And kick this off with Animorphs, the sixth. I'm having a lot of problems saying sixth. The sixth studio album from
Wait until you
Norway's.
get to the titles of the
Oh
songs.
God, I'm dreading that. So yeah, Animorphs, is the sixth studio album from Norway's Honningbarna. Do you remember the Animorphs out of interest?
Yeah, I think I had
Yeah.
some Animorphs toys, possibly. Maybe not. I'm maybe a bit too old for it, but I certainly remember watching it on telly.
See, I don't,
Um,
I don't really remember the show that much. I remember the books. I had quite a few of the books.
Animorphs. Animorphs.
uh,
it's like the opening track. Uh, yeah. Oh no, you
yeah, it
know
was
what
a
I'm thinking of?
series of
I think
books
I'm thinking
by
of Beast Wars.
oh maybe. So there's a series of books by K.A. Applegate, and it had like basically all the covers were like a picture of like a I don't know, like a teenager, and it would be like transforming from an animal to a human, and like all the books were like from the perspective of a a different character. It was like from their first person perspective. I remember them being really good. I don't remember anything about like what happened in the books or anything like that, but they were yeah they would transform from animals to humans and vice versa. They were animal morphers. You see where the
I
name comes
see.
from. Um,
Clever.
so that's how that worked. It's a bit like Transformers, but like
I think that's
biological rather than like robots.
Yeah, I think that's why I was thinking of Beast Wars, because sure it was like the animal versions of Transformers. So it would be like I can think it was like a rhino or a warthog that turned into a transformer.
Ah, yeah, probably. Like there was
Like
like
a
the
mechanized
yeah,
warthog.
yeah, yeah. There was like the Dinobots as well. Like if you
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
them. Anyway, there was a TV show as well, which I don't really remember. And just out of interest, I looked up the like intro sequence on YouTube, and it's really shit, like hard rock song for the theme music. And one of the main actors is the guy who played Iceman in the X-Men films. His name's Sean Ashmore. And he's recently in like Amazon's series The Boys. If I've never seen that, but it's like a super like
Yeah,
R-rated superhero show.
yeah.
But what was of more interest to me was that he's the main character in the game Quantum Break by Remedy Entertainment, who are the developers of like the Max Payne and Alan Wake games. And
Okay, okay.
so he was like the main character, and you played as him. It was like a weird time travel story. And the villain in that game is the guy who plays Mayor Carcetti in The Wire. So there's an interesting connection with my
Huh.
binging of The Wire there. So that's the only reason I mentioned it. So anyway, let's talk about the actual album. So I mean, this is another band that I've only just discovered.
And they're
They're
fucking good. Like they're
yeah,
really,
yeah.
really good.
Yeah, man. I think the fact that they're on their sixth album is kind of like we're basically hitting them when they're like they've mastered their craft essentially.
Yeah.
They're essentially a hardcore punk band, but with a bit of a twist. They sort of do this thing where they sort of jump effortlessly between like blasts of hardcore and like sort of joyous indie punk anthems, and like mixing hardcore riffs and throat shredding vocals with these like noodling guitar lines and like you know radio friendly choruses pretty much. And much like Genie, who we mentioned before, they sing in their native tongue, and it's a native dialect from the city of Kristiansand on the south coast of
I,
Norway.
I've been to Kristiansand.
Have you?
Yeah, it's quite nice. It's funny you mention them being from Norway. I sent this over to one of our mutual friends, and I was like, "Have you listened to the album?" And he's like, "Man, I don't know. Did I listen to it? Which one was that?" And I was like, "They're Norwegian, like the Norwegian punk band. And have you listened to it?" And he's like, "I'm not too sure." And I'm like, "I think you would know. I
The one
think
the
you would
one where
know
they
if you listen
sing.
to the one that they sing in Norwegian." I was like, nah, so he hasn't listened to it, but he's missing out. He's missing out
he's
because
he's absolutely missing out.
it's a fantastic album.
But yeah, I mean, the reason I mentioned Genie there was just, we can't understand the lyrics, but again, the sort of
It
performance of the
doesn't take
band is
anything away
so
from
good that it doesn't really matter. Like I said, this is a band at the top of their game. It's like confident, self-assured. It channels the experimental spirit of classic Refused, the abrasive attack of early Death from Above 1979, and some of the more interesting moments from bands like The Strokes. I'm thinking stuff like more like Reptilia, that kind of sort of thing that the Strokes do, rather than their sort of more croony kind of stuff.
I think there's a heavy kind of idols, slaves vibe to a lot of the songs here as well.
Yeah, that kind of noise punk kind of thing, definitely.
Mhm. And
Um,
Dits actually reminded me of that band that we covered a wee while ago as well. Dits.
yeah, I think they've just released an album, I think, as well, so you need to check that one out. So the album opens with title track Animorphs, and it's just like it's a 3 minute song, and the first minute and a half are just like beating drums that just get louder and more deafening and just keep building until this like thundering bass line kicks in and these kind of like stabbing they're like industrial guitar riffs that come in, and it reminds me a lot of Nine Inch Nails actually, that sort of industrial sound to it. And the vocals are absolutely brutal. Like you get those the gang shouts of Animorphs are really like it's one of the few bits that I can actually join in with because I can pronounce the
Yeah.
words that they're singing.
Yeah.
So that's it's a really good way to open the album.
It kind of starts, I suppose. I've written like the lyrics, Anamorphs, the gang vocals, as you said, initially start off as quite kind of monotone, almost kind of nonchalant, but it does build an intensity until the point where it's, as you said, he's absolutely screaming at the top of his voice. It's pretty punishing.
Yeah, and like the next track, Passager, it's got like the vocals they're less screamed for the most part. But they've got this kind of aggro punk kind of attitude to them, and you've got that kind of pulsating bass, the thumping drums again. It's got a kind of this is a proper like hardcore punk track. It's got like this kind of snarling engine to it that just drives along. It's one of the more kind of straight up hardcore songs, I suppose, on the album.
The bass on that song is great. Like I just love the tone that they managed
Yeah.
to get on the bass. It feels really kind of fast and loose. That was one of the singles that they released from the album, as far as I understand it, like back in I think it was November. And this bass then carries on to the third song, which was probably one of my favourite songs on the album.
Yeah. That is the song that made me fall in love with this band.
Ah,
Jeg Har List, say track three.
yeah. So Jeg stands for I, because again, Google Translate, because I know that the fourth song translates I hear, I think. So yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, it's a fantastic. The third song is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's got like a driving punk verse. It's really catchy. It goes really hard, especially the bass, like you mentioned on the previous song.
It's fucking beautiful.
Like the pre-chorus, like there's a storming pre-chorus and like an anthemic chorus, and the whole song is just completely unstoppable, and it's just everything I want from a punk band. Like it's fast, it's anarchic, it's heavy, it's catchy as fuck. There's hooks all over the fucking place. I mean, I don't think that's too much to ask, is it?
No.
Maybe it is, but the like last 40 seconds of the song, and this is something they do quite a lot, is just at the end of the song they just absolutely smash everything they've done already as hard as possible, and the last 40 seconds of the song will be unbelievable live, I would say.
Aye. Uh-huh.
And a lot of the tracks are sort of like they build to that kind of final.
Cacophony of
Yeah,
madness.
yeah, absolutely. That next track you said was maybe I Hear, Jeg, Horror,
Yeah,
track
it's kind
four.
of.
I don't want to
I've
speculate too much on what the words mean because I haven't done any research on that whatsoever. So I'm just making shit up if I do.
it kind of starts. there's a bit of a tonal change there. I've kind of described it as starting with this kind of real sense of there's a kind of real sense of kind of urgency and desperation to it. There's this kind of quick, fast paced and kind of pressured guitar riff with kind of bursts of kind of drum frills kind of fleshing out the kind of choral section. It feels almost apocalyptic, like almost as a kind of warning. But similarly, as the last song, it kind of ends in that kind of frenzied cacophony of screaming and shouted vocals, which is kind of peppered throughout the course of the song,
Yeah,
throughout the course of the album rather.
there's some good like call and answer moments in the vocals, and I've just said the last 40 seconds are fucking go. but
The
there's
scratcher fucking go.
yeah, absolutely. The middle of that song is one of the bits that reminds me a lot of Refused. It's very Shape of Punk to Come, and that
Yeah,
kind of
I'll give you that.
sort of experimental punk. And I don't know if it's maybe not the first example. They've got this weird electronic like they sort of go woo, but it's electronic and echoes, and
Aye.
they use that a lot on pretty much every song. I would say that's on
Uh-huh.
there, and it's just a really fun kind of weird thing that they throw in every now and again.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a few times where they use that. There's kind of the odd. You've mentioned it already. I've mentioned it a bit further down in my notes, but you do have there is a bit of kind of industrial sounds to
Yeah.
thrown in for good measure every now and again as well.
Yeah, I think there's a bit on the fifth track that reminded me of like Kasabian, like early Kasabian, like something a bit like Clubfoot or something like that. The sort of echoing backing vocals that they do.
Yeah.
And then it's track six, Ah Bliss, which kind of takes like a departure from what's gone before, and becomes basically like this rollicking radio ready indie punk song with
Oh,
like a
absolutely.
huge like anthemic chorus.
Yeah, I've described it as like just a kind of straight up kind of pop punk number. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're right. You could quite easily see that being played on the radio.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like I think there's elements of the Strokes, Razorlight, Kings of Leon. And I mean the best parts of those bands. I don't mean the sort of dross, bland bits of those bands. I mean the very best moments of those bands in there. And there's even a weird bit in that song vocally that reminded me of Video Killed the Radio Star for some reason, which is pretty wild. Um, I don't know why, but it's just an overall really sort of joyous song. Um,
bliss. It's
yeah,
bliss. It's
yeah.
blissful.
And I think if this had come out in like 2006 and maybe was in English, then it could have been like an absolutely massive hit.
Hmm. What did you make of song 7?
So that
Avante.
Avante, yeah, that it basically goes back to the full on punk sound, doesn't it? And it's
Yeah.
very. I mean, I've written here it's straight off of "You're a Woman, I'm a Machine" by Death from Above 1979. Like it's got
It's
that
that
kind of
bass again.
it's that loud, like angry, like punishing, sort of rough around the edges sound that all those early Death from Above songs have.
Yeah. Again, I've said it's that return of that kind of fat, dirty bass sound, which I love. Like that's a real standout feature of this album. And as you quite rightly said, you get that kind of real sense of desperation again, almost this kind of impenetrable wall of sound. But then there is that, they've obviously got something there, because I've kind of described that there's the odd kind of smack of what sounds like kind of spiraling 8-bit electronic beeps and bloops. And as I said, as I kind of mentioned it earlier on, that kind of scraping industrial sounds as well, somewhere in there.
Yeah, they pepper those kind of things all throughout the album, don't they?
Hmm.
I mean, the next song, track eight. I'm not gonna try and pronounce this, but it's another sort of more radio ready song, and it's got a sort of like glittering kind of sparkling electronic soundscape on it that reminded me of MGMT for some reason. Like the song doesn't sound like MGMT, but that kind of sound in the background made me think of MGMT, and I think it's the song "Kids" that I was thinking of, but
All right, okay.
it's I mean, I'm probably full of shit, but there was just something. It's like, and the first thing that came to mind was, oh, MGMT for some reason. But it doesn't sound like MGMT, and it, unlike MGMT, packs a really heavy punch, and it's got this really radio ready chorus, but it's also really heavy at the same time as well. It's such a good song. I'd say the next track nine's still good, but it doesn't quite stand out as much as some of the other songs. It does, and later on in the song, it's got some sort of cool kind of little more technical instrumental parts that reminded me a little bit of the likes of Dan and Aykroyd, like those sort of technical guitar lines and
That kind
stuff.
of math rock.
Yeah, but it's not as, it doesn't have some of the big moments that a lot of these other tracks do. But the last three tracks on the album are all belters.
Aye. Mithaus? Mithus? I don't know. I think it translates my house anyway.
Yeah, it'll be a good guess.
Because that's the thing. Uh, this is me going off topic, but I remember being in Norway and like, so obviously up where we're from, we call kids bairns, and their name translates to the honey children. So Barna sounds very similar to bairns, and I think there must be a connection there because I think I remember like seeing a nursery, and I think it was like Barnahus or something like that, and Miguel was like, oh, yeah, that's the nursery. I was like, okay.
The
Sorry to
Bairn
get
House.
off.
I think there's quite a
Burn
few
House.
like similarities between you know Scottish words, or at least Doric words maybe, and like Scandinavian words as well.
Yeah.
There are some, I think, quite a lot of similarities actually.
You wonder if, like, you know how we say fit, far, and fan, like, as opposed to what, where, and when. You wonder if that in itself, like, the F rather, like, using the F rather than the W, you wonder if that's almost Scandinavian origin, because it almost sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure somebody's written like a paper on this. Like,
Oh, they absolutely will
you'd
have,
be
yeah.
you'd be able to find
Fucking
out.
University of Aberdeen or something. But anyway, aye, sorry. The 11th song, My House, which I think that's what it stands for. Again, the bass is fucking stand out. But then it kind of has a bit of a jazzy feel to it. It's what I took from it. I've described it as almost being similar in many ways to things we might have heard in the likes of the Squid album, Bright Green Field, or kind of Black Midi. So it did have a bit more of an experimental feel to it. Certainly felt that kind of bridge at the kind of 220 mark or whatever it was. Felt quite ominous, brooding. I really
Yeah,
dug that. I
absolutely.
really quite enjoyed it.
There's a sort of like siren sound. I don't know if it's made by the guitars, if it's an electronic sound, but yeah, like you said, it's sort of ominous and a wee bit sinister. Like
Aye,
like this. It
absolutely.
reminded me of like in Silent Hill when the siren goes off and everything kind of, the fog starts to come in, and it all gets a bit
I
more
thought you were going to give us an
evil sounding.
impression of the siren there, Snid.
I know I've made such an arse of the
The air horn.
the air horn that I'm not even going to attempt this. But everyone knows what the Silent Hill siren sounds like, and if you
Yeah,
don't,
they
they
absolutely
can
do.
they can find out pretty easily. It's like an air raid siren essentially. But yeah, and I like the way how it's sort of towards the end of it, it gets like fuzzier and the drums get louder, and then it sort of fades out and then fades back in, and then merges into like the final track, which basically does something completely different and brings in like black metal style blast beats and like these windswept riffs, and then kind of turns that into like a really catchy driving punk song. It's really cool. It's like by the time you get to the end of this album,
Change it up.
you don't expect to be surprised again. Yeah, you don't expect it. So that was really cool.
What did you give it, man?
So I've given it a 9, a really strong 9, and I was tempted
To give it a 10.
to give it in, really tempted, but then I think I was just like, there's some bits that aren't as strong. There's only really one song that isn't as strong for me, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I went for a 9, but it is a really strong 9, and
I mean, I've given it a 9 as well. I was very tempted to give it a 10 out of 10, like yourself. because I've described it as practically flawless from start to finish.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very, very close. And
that there were times where, as you said, like my interest kind of dipped slightly, but the good songs aren't just good. You know, they're fucking great. You know what I
aye,
mean? Like, so it
they're
kind of more
absolutely,
makes up for it.
yeah, like the best songs on here are absolutely top tier.
Oh, aye.
Yeah, such a good album. Like I'm gonna be listening to this.
So am I, and I'm trying to sing along in full Norwegian.
Well, that's the thing. There's so many like bits that you like. I really want to sing along with them, and I'm like, it's hard to like because it's a different language. It doesn't so easily kind of your brain doesn't so
It
easily kind
doesn't
of
roll off your tongue.
pick it
Yeah,
up, and it doesn't roll off your tongue. So that's a little bit. Kind of annoys me because I want to like really kind of get in and like shout along to some of these more anthemic moments, but
it's. I mean, I don't know if they ever will tour the UK, but certainly if they do, I'll be definitely going to see them.
yeah, if they do, I'm definitely there. Unless it's inconvenient, such is
Yeah,
life.
aye, such is life.
Such is life. But yeah, I'd absolutely make it a priority to go and see them. Cool. So that was Animorphs' sixth album by Norwegian band Honningbarna.
It's not finished. It's finished.